In the winter of 1903, the town of Grayson Mills sat quietly along the edge of the Allegheny foothills, barely marked on maps and rarely spoken about outside the county. It existed because the railroad needed a stop and the river needed men willing to work in its cold, black water. People came to Grayson Mill to disappear from cities, from families, from questions. What they did not expect was to disappear completely. The mill itself dominated the town, a long wooden structure reinforced with iron braces, built beside a narrow gorge where the river cut sharply through stone. At night, the mill's windows glowed like a line of tired eyes, watching the road that led in and out. The sound of grinding gears never fully stopped. Even when the mill closed, even when the men went home, people swore they could still hear it working. In December that year, the river froze earlier than expected. Ice crept across its surface in jagged sheets, trapping debris beneath it, branches, tools, once even a mule that had slipped near the bank. When the body of Thomas Elridge surfaced a week later, frozen upright between two slabs of ice, the town was forced to pay attention. Thomas was not a drifter. He was not unknown. He was the mill's night foreman, a man with a wife, 2 children, and a reputation for being careful. He did not drink. He did not wander. And yet his body was found nearly a mile downstream from where he should have been, his hands worn raw as if he had clawed at stone for hours. The official explanation was simple: slipped footing, hypothermia, panic. But the coroner noted something quietly, almost apologetically, in his report. There was river silt in Thomas's lungs, yes, but there were also deep bruises around his wrists, finger-shaped, human. Within 2 weeks, another man vanished. Then another. They were always mill workers, always night shifts, always experienced men who knew the machinery and the river well, and always, when they were found all, their bodies showed signs of struggle that didn't fit accidents. Sheriff Caleb Horn arrived from the county seat in January. He was practical, deliberate, and deeply uncomfortable with superstition. He interviewed widows, inspected the mill, walked the frozen riverbank until his boots soaked through. He found nothing that satisfied him, but he did notice one thing. Every man who disappeared had signed the same ledger. The mill kept detailed records: hours worked, machinery maintenance, material output. Tucked between those pages was a thinner book rarely referenced. It recorded after-hours operations, repairs done late, deliveries made outside scheduled runs, work assigned directly by the mill owner, Jonathan Price. Price was respected, wealthy, and almost never present. When he did appear, it was at night. Sheriff Horn requested to see him. Price arrived at the mill just after dusk, stepping out of a black carriage with no markings. He was older than expected, his hair white but his posture rigid, his eyes alert in a way that made people uneasy without knowing why. He spoke politely, calmly. He denied everything. These men were paid well, Price said. They knew the risks. Horn asked about the bruises. Price smiled faintly. The river grips hard. That night, the sheriff stayed in town. He took a room above the general store and lay awake listening to the mill's distant hum. Around 2:40 a.m., he heard something else. A whistle, not the mill whistle, not the train. A long, low sound rising from the gorge, echoing off stone, vibrating through the cold air. It sounded almost deliberate. By morning, another man was gone. This time, the body was never recovered. Horn began to notice patterns no one else wanted to see. The disappearances aligned with specific lunar cycles. The river's current shifted unnaturally on certain nights, and the mill's machinery, when examined closely, had been modified in subtle ways. Gears that fed downward instead of across, chutes that led not to processing bins, but to sealed shafts beneath the building. The sheriff requested a full shutdown of the mill. Price refused. That refusal became the motive, officially, for what happened next. On February 11th, 1904, the mill burned. The fire started below ground. That much was certain. Flames burst up to floorboards and narrow columns. As if following a pre-existing path, the structure collapsed inward, not outward. Workers who escaped said the heat was unbearable, but strangely contained. When the fire died, investigators searched the ruins. They found no bodies, but they did find bones. Hundreds of them. Not human bones alone. Animal. Human. Old. New. Mixed together, polished smooth by water and friction, collected in chambers carved directly into the bedrock beneath the mill. The walls of those chambers bore marks, grooves worn deep by repeated contact, as if something heavy had been dragged through them again and again, and carved into stone over and over were the same symbols. Not religious, not industrial, something older, something shaped like instructions rather than decoration. Jonathan Price was never found. Officially, the case closed with the fire. The mill was declared unsafe. Grayson Mill emptied slowly over the following years. The railroad rerouted. The town faded. But the river remained. Even now, locals avoid that stretch of water. Fish do not linger there. Ice forms unevenly. And sometimes on quiet nights, people report hearing a low whistle rising from the gorge, long, steady, patient, as if something beneath the river is still working, still waiting. In the spring of 1916, the town of Hollow Creek, West Virginia, was already dying. Coal had been pulled from the surrounding hills for decades, and the mines had hollowed the land from the inside out. Sinkholes appeared without warning. Wells ran dry or turned black overnight. Families stayed because leaving required money, and money required working underground. At the edge of town stood St. Agnes Orphan Asylum. It was a brick building built into the hillside itself, half buried by design, its lower level carved directly into stone. The church said it was safer that way, warm in winter, cool in summer. The townspeople said it felt like the hill was swallowing it. The asylum housed children no one claimed. Orphans, runaways, children sent by courts who didn't want to deal with them. It was overseen by 3 nuns and 1 lay administrator, a woman named Margaret Doyle. Margaret kept perfect records. Every child had a name, an age, an intake date. Their behaviors were logged daily. Their punishments were noted, their illnesses carefully described. Their departures, however, were not. In March of that year, a traveling school inspector named Edwin Price arrived unexpectedly. He had been sent after a letter reached the state office containing only a list of names and the sentence, "They are not being moved. They are being buried." Margaret greeted him calmly. The nuns did not. Price noted immediately that the children were quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Not disciplined, not afraid, just absent. When spoken to, many took several seconds to respond, as if waiting for permission that never came. He toured the building from top to bottom. Dormitories were clean, kitchens orderly, chapel immaculate. But when he asked about the lower level, Margaret hesitated. "That area is restricted," she said. "Old storage. Unsafe." Price insisted. The stairs down were narrow, stone, damp. The air changed with each step, cooler, heavier, carrying a smell like wet earth and iron. Lantern light revealed walls reinforced with timber supports, the same kind used in mines. Rooms branched off the main corridor. Empty rooms. Rooms with beds bolted to the floor. Rooms with chains embedded directly into the stone. Margaret explained these were old, leftovers from before her time, necessary precautions for unmanageable children. Price wrote everything down. That night, he stayed in the asylum. He was given a small guest room near the upper floor. He slept lightly. Shortly after midnight, he heard movement below him, not footsteps, dragging, slow, rhythmic scraping, like something heavy being pulled through stone corridors again and again. It stopped whenever he moved, resumed when he lay still. By morning, 1 child was missing. Margaret said the boy had been transferred days earlier. The record said otherwise. Price confronted her. She did not deny it. She simply told him he didn't understand the purpose of the place. "The hill takes," she said. "It always has. We only decide how." Price attempted to leave that afternoon. His horse was found wandering the road without him. 3 days later, the sheriff arrived. He was accompanied by 2 deputies and a doctor. Margaret greeted them with tea. The nuns stood silently behind her. They searched the building. They found the inspector's notebook in a locked drawer, pages torn out, ink smudged as if written in panic. They searched the lower level. Behind a false wall, they found a shaft descending deep into the hillside, far deeper than the building's foundation should have allowed. The air rising from it was warm, moist, breathing. Ropes hung down into darkness. Marks on the stone showed repeated use. The doctor refused to go further. That night, the sheriff stayed. At 1:17 a.m., a scream echoed from beneath the asylum. One scream. Cut short, the deputies ran downstairs. The lower corridor was empty, the shaft open. The sheriff was never seen again. By morning, Margaret Doyle and the nuns were gone. No signs of struggle. No footprints. No tracks leading away. The asylum closed within a month. Official records listed as abandoned due to structural instability. Years later, miners broke into a sealed cavern beneath the hill. They found children's shoes embedded in rock. Small skeletons fused into mineral deposits, as if the stone itself had grown around them. The cave collapsed shortly after. Today, Hollow Creek no longer exists. Maps list the area as unstable terrain. No buildings remain, but hikers report warm air rising from cracks in the ground. They report hearing children whispering underground, slow, synchronized, repeating the same phrase. We stayed. They told us to. The hill remembers.